hand up if you got really overambitious with vlogging and tried to do far too much, got burnt out, gave up, and now we're here. Aha. I thought it would be a fucking fantastic idea to do Books and Lala's Buzzwordathon this year. They have a prompt for every month to do with the book title and a prompt for every month to do with the book cover. And I was like, oh, fantastic. That's 24 prompts. Let me just read 24 books for a vlog. Doesn't matter if it'll take me a year. It does matter because I'm autistic and have ADHD, and trying to read 24 books for a vlog and then realising how many I was DNFing, and I'm trying to replace some of the DNFs so I wasn't DNFing something or both books every single month was getting a bit much. So I've done a lot of reading for this vlog. I have not finished it. I'm not going to finish it, but I do need to catch you up on some of the books I haven't talked about. And then I'm just going to play the rest of the reviews and clips I did for the books that I have read, because I read a lot of books for this vlog and I'm not finishing it because it was too much and it was stressing me out and it put me in a book slump. So we're finishing this here. If you're still doing the Buzzwordathon, then by all means steal some ideas from me for these prompts, but I'm not fucking finishing it. You can have this like coalesced mess of whatever I managed to edit this into and maybe get some book recs out of it. If you're lucky. I don't know. This vlog is a fucking mess. I'm just going to go through the months, and if I didn't finish a month, I will let you know. Right, January. Starting off strong with January. I have a DNF and then I didn't read the second one. Book title prompt, it was Truth and Lies. I picked The Mistress of Lies. I DNF'd this about 4 pages in because it sounded like every other fantasy book on the market at the moment. It was so uninteresting. The relationship between the sister and the brother was boring. I couldn't find anyone to root for. Hard DNF. I was gonna read Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor, but it's not out yet, I want to say, or I couldn't find it. I just didn't get around to reading it. I don't know. I'm trying to make an excuse. I didn't read it, but that was going to be for a book with a pattern on the cover for January. In February, the prompt for titles were water words, so any words to do with water. So I picked The Bog Wife because bogs are wet. And the prompt for the cover was to have a skyline on it, so I went with The Song of the Huntress. Now, let's start with The Bog Wife. This book was bizarre. This is another story that has very limited plot. It is more of a character study of this bizarre Appalachian family. Is it Appalachian or Appalachian? One of those Appalachian families that live on a bog, and they're very culty vibes because the dad of the family, who is he's the patriarch, he's the only living parent. He has, oh my God, is it 4 or is it 5? I want to say 5, but I also couldn't list them off the top of my head anymore. He has children. Who he has indoctrinated into this way of life. They worship the bog. Their mother was a bog wife and came from the bog. And they mention that maybe she returned at some point, but that is left very vague. But we have a little snippet of like their childhood, and then we go straight into adulthood, and their father is dying. And they are trying to get the one sister who moved away from the family to come back, because apparently all the kids have to be there when the dad dies, and then something has to happen with the bog. I'm not going to spoil anything, but it is this fucked up story about this family who basically worship a bog and are convinced that the bog is the only reason that their lives work. Like it is a core part of their world. I apologise for the cat in the background. And then when things start fucking that up, it's about how they react and how they cope, and how what they've been taught their entire lives slowly gets peeled away, like layer by layer, much to their chagrin. It is a gritty, earthy, I always want to say dirty story, but not in like a sexy way, in a like there's literally just dirt everywhere. Everything is a bit gross. Everything is a bit uncomfortable. There are some just utterly bizarre happenings in this story. For example, there is one of the sons, I think the eldest son, has an issue with like the lower half of his body, because in the night when he was sleeping, a tree fell on the house and squashed his pelvis. And they didn't take him to hospital. They didn't do anything. They just like laid him in bed. They might have put him in the bog for a bit. I can't remember. But he now is fucked up for the rest of his life because they didn't give him medical care. They also just left the tree in the house. So there has been like a tree on the house for many years, and they just don't use that part of the house. There are so many little nuggets of this story that are just like what the fuck moments. I enjoyed this book, but in the sort of way I had the ebook. I got it on Everand, and it was just, I just couldn't stop reading. Like it was compulsively readable, because it was bananas. And I just could never really work out what the hell was going to happen next. But it is very much a story about fucked up families and coming into your own and trying to accept independence after you've been sheltered for a long time. It does have very culty vibes, but I'm not sure if you could call it a cult because it is literally just about this family. There are very few other characters in this story. Would highly recommend if you want a really weird read. Now, Song of the Huntress is a story about the Wild Hunt. I'm not going to try and remember any of the names, but even pronounce the ones that I do remember, because the audiobook did a good job of like telling me the names and how they're supposed to be pronounced. I have forgotten all of them, and it's all Old English like Saxon names, and I'm never very good at those. But this is a sapphic romance, I think. I didn't get that far, between the leader of the Wild Hunt and the Saxon queen, who is a little too independent for the nobles' liking, but her husband is very fond of her and lets her do what she likes. It's that kind of dynamic. I picked this up in Glastonbury. This heavily features Glastonbury, which is the area that I live in, and like the lands around it. So in that respect, it was very cool reading about the land that I live in a different period of time. It was clearly very well researched. It was clearly very well thought out. It was just a little bit dry, and it was very heavily centered on war and territories and lots of men arguing over each other and arguing about decisions in war and ignoring the women. And I understand that they were probably going to get to the women having a bit more power and like showing them what's what. But we were taking a very long time to get there. I was kind of losing track of who was who because of the nature of Saxon names, they are all very similar. They all start with A, usually, or they're all like Ethelstan or Ethelred or Ethel this, that and the other. And it got very confusing. And a lot of people made a lot of stupid decisions that I couldn't really justify, but I also have very little patience with war in stories if it's not done well anyway. So this was a DNF. I would recommend it to other people. I have another book of Lucy Holland's, which I think is called Sister Song, that I still want to give a go. I think it was just not the right story for me, but I did really enjoy her writing. I think she's a great writer and I would happily try something else. But unfortunately, this one did not do it for me. I think I needed a little more girl power right from the beginning and a little less men being dumbasses. Basically, that's where I'm at. Yeah, that was February. In March, the prompt for the title was Thing, had to have the word thing in it. So I picked Content Warning Everything by Kweki Emezi. And the prompt for the cover was books. It had to have books on the cover. So I picked The Village Library Demon Hunting Society. That's a very long title. I DNF'd Content Warning Everything. This is a poetry collection by Kweki Emezi. I loved Little Rot by them. I absolutely loved it, but that was a novel. And I don't get along with poetry that has no punctuation, and this poetry has no punctuation. I could tell that it was very meaningful to them and that it had come from a place of self-discovery and probably trauma. I only got like 3 poems in, but there was no punctuation, and because I was reading an ebook as well, sometimes the formatting's a bit mucked up, so I couldn't tell if the sentences were ending at the right points, and I don't think they were all the time, or that could have been intentional, but I just poetry is not a thing that I vibe with unless it's like your very typical like structures that we get taught in primary school kind of poetry, you know what I mean? That's the kind of poetry that I understand and vibe with because I understand that structure. There's more like free form type stuff. I don't understand it. I need more punctuation, please. Other people will probably like this poetry collection, but it was not for me. However, then I read I'm not going to get that name right, The Village Library Demon Hunting Society. This was a solid read. This is about Sherry Pinkwhistle, the main librarian in a little town called Winesap in upstate New York. And there are a lot of murders that happen in Winesap, and she solves them. She is like the go-to person to solve these murders. And then suddenly someone gets murdered that she actually knows, and things start unfolding, and she realizes it's a little bit weird that there have been so many murders in this little town. And demons get involved at some point, hence the title. And there is a society of sorts formed, and it is very funny. She's like middle-aged to older. I think she's in her 60s. So it's an older protagonist. She's so done with like everyone else's bullshit. She doesn't take any shit. She does what she likes. There are some fantastic side characters and a really good reveal at the end that I only caught just before it was revealed. So I really enjoyed it. It was a solid 4-star. It wasn't perfect. I think the setup for the supernatural twist needed a bit more time spent on it. I would have loved to have just been able to sit with that a little bit longer, to get some reactions, to get a couple more like almost like bits of evidence that it was real. I feel like we jumped on that bandwagon pretty quickly. But apart from that, solid. I read it in one night. I read it in 3 sittings in an evening. So, April. Hello. April was just animals. Either animals in the title or animals on the cover. For animals in the title, I read Black Sheep by, oh my god, what's her name? Rachel Harrison, because I have enjoyed other stuff from her before. I didn't hate this. This was about her, god, it's been a minute since I read these books. This was about her going home to the cult that she grew up in, which was like a satanic cult. Her mum was also a horror movie star who was like super famous in horror circles. And her 2 best friends from childhood were getting married, and she decides it's a great idea to go back for the wedding, even though she can't work out why she's been invited. This was like a mid book. It was entertaining. I saw the twist coming a fucking mile off. It succeeded in creeping me out. So it kind of did what it set out to do horror-wise. But I saw the twist coming forever. And then once the twist happened, the book just kind of kept going. And I was done with it by then. So yeah, it's a thing that I read. The other one I was going to read was Faithbreaker. I think I ended up DNFing that in the end. This is the 3rd book in the Godkiller trilogy. I only got a couple of pages in. I also bought the audiobook to see if the audiobook was any better. Turns out the audiobook narrator, terrible, awful narrator. So at some point, I am just going to remind myself of what happened in Godkiller and Sunbringer and then go immediately into Faithbreaker, because I just couldn't remember anything. I remember adoring both the first books, and I could not remember anything going into Faithbreaker. So I think this is not a like hard DNF, it's a soft DNF, but it was a DNF. Hello. So May's prompts for the title were the words to or to, as in to go to or me too. So I picked Sorcerer to the Crown, and then the prompt for the cover was eyes. It had to have eyes on it. So I picked the Firelight Apprentice because there are quite a few eyes on there. Let's start with Sorcerer to the Crown. I DNF'd this 3 pages in. This was supposed to be about... Hello, VoiceOver Cat here. I clearly talked about so many books in this vlog that I completely forgot which one was what. So I just talked about completely the wrong book in this clip. So I'm just going to tell you what it's about now. This is about Zacharias Wythe, a freed slave who is the Sorcerer Royal of the Unnatural Philosophers, one of the most respected organisations throughout all Britain, and he is venturing to the border of Fairyland to discover why England's magical stocks are drying up. I found this so incredibly dull, and it gave me real Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell vibes, which I just hated, didn't love, cannot recommend. And that's really all I remember about it. That is why I DNF'd it. It was just dry. There were no female characters of note. And I didn't want to read just another version of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. So, yeah. The Firelight Apprentice, however, is by Brie Paulson. She is the person who wrote Garlic and the Witch and Garlic and the Vampire. I always say that it was in the wrong order. Garlic and the Vampire is first, then it's Garlic and the Witch, which are the most adorable middle grade graphic novels. They are fantastic. I love the illustrations, which is why I picked up The Firelight Apprentice. I think this is still middle grade, but it is harder hitting in a sense. There's stronger topics on the table to discuss. This is about a poor family who one of the girls has magic, and they end up apprenticing her to a magician, a well-known magician, in order for her to control it, because otherwise she's going to start destroying things because she can't control her magic. And then things happen, things are uncovered, liches are a thing that exist in this world, and there's some cool world building around it. The family owns a light bulb shop, so the design around that shop was really cool. I enjoyed that part. The story itself was fine. I didn't really have any strong feelings either way about it. I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I gave it a go, but it was not blowing me away. I think the main thing that put me off is, now don't get me wrong, I really, really enjoy the art style. I don't know that she can draw children very well because the main character is a child and she just looks like an old lady that has been shrunk, but she's still saying and being drawn in this like playful, childish way. And it's just really off-putting because she doesn't look like a child. And it's the art style, I think, but it just doesn't work for me. And that put me off the entire way through because she's the main character. It also was very sad, which I kind of knew was coming, but it's like Garlic and the Vampire and Garlic and the Witch were like brain bleach. They were good for my soul. I would recommend them to anyone because they're just fabulous. This was not. This was a bit depressing, really. So mid. just mid. Not incredible, but not bad either. Some people will really like this. It's just a bit of a tone shift from the other two graphic novels, and that didn't really work for me. I will continue to read stuff that she puts out though. I just want more garlic. That's really all I want for her. I just want more garlic. For June, it was going to be memory words in the title. So I read Scorpions, a memoir by Tuppence Middleton. This is a fantastic memoir about Tuppence's struggles with OCD specifically, and then how that ties into her emetophobia as well. It's really short. It's really well written. It's really descriptive. Huge trigger warnings if you've got any issues with OCD, anxiety, depression, emetophobia, germs, cleanliness, like anything along those lines, you're going to fucking hate this book. But I thought it was really well written. I thought it was really well thought out. It made me feel a lot of sympathy towards her. If you've not heard of her before, I think she's most famous for her role in Sense8. She was the DJ from Sense8. I can't remember if I've seen her in anything else recently, but she's an actress basically. She also grew up near where I now live, so some of that was nostalgic. That's not the right word, but you get what I mean. Really enjoyed it. Really thought-provoking. I was texting people about it while I was reading it going, have you ever thought of this like this way? Have you ever considered this? Hugely recommend. And then I was going to read The Incandescent by Emily Tesh, but it's not out yet because I make my life difficult and pick books for this that are not released, and then I have to wait for them to be released, and then I get really annoyed when I have to wait. Anyway, didn't read it. That was supposed to be a celestial cover. For July, it was punctuation in the title, so I picked The Butcher's Daughter, which was an arc I received from the publishers via the Fantasy Hive. I DNF this at 75%. This is the untold story of Mrs. Lovett from Sweeney Todd. I have seen Sweeney Todd the film. I know some of the musical, and I did not care for this book. It was incredibly long. It, to my knowledge, was not written by UK authors. At least one of them is Canadian. I don't know about the other. It was leaning so hard into Victorian stereotypes. It was really like, not even in like a fun campy way, just in like, okay, you just Googled what Victorian people should say and then you did it. And then it was all in like, there was some weird IVF stuff going on. You know what did it? It was the completely unnecessary lesbian relationship that lasted about 4 pages, came out of nowhere. No rhyme or reason to it, no motivation behind it, and then suddenly it was done and gone and never mentioned again. And that it just felt like such a throwaway and like a half-assed way of like diversifying your characters. Maybe like fucking do your job better. No, I'm not into it. And then the cover for July had to be technology, so I was gonna read White Trash Warlock, and then I didn't. So I have no thoughts about that book. For August, I didn't read either of these. The title had to have with in it, so I was going to read The Prince Without Sorrow, which came out in March. I gave up on this in March. It's currently May. Don't get me started. And then I was going to read I'm Afraid You Got Dragons by Peter S. Beagle for the cover one, where you have to have transportation on the cover. Dragons are transportation if you're brave enough, so I was counting that. But I didn't get around to reading it. It's still on my TBR. I'll get there at some point. In September, the title prompt for Buzzwordathon was events. Cover prompt was foliage. For events, I picked The Graveyard Shift by ML Rio. I DNF'd this. This was not a good book. This was bad. This is a novella. I've not read anything else by ML Rio before, and the novella follows a group of people who all are nocturnal for one reason or another, and they all meet up in a graveyard for a smoke break, and then they find a grave that has been dug up, and they decide to work out why. And I didn't get further than that because it was bad. It felt like a self-indulgent amateur Wattpad writer, amateur being the key word there, who had a poor idea but a very self-important perspective on it, and thought that it was much better than it was. I don't know. Does that make sense? It felt very like up itself, and it wasn't saying very much, and all of the characters were very dislikable. I didn't like any of them, and I'm a bit salty that I paid full price for the hardback, which is like this fucking thick. So DNF'd at like, I think after the first couple of chapters. This was a no for me. No. Shift being the event. The graveyard shift was the event that was referenced, in case that wasn't clear. For the cover prompt of foliage, I went with The Sapling Cage. This was a relatively new addition to my physical TBR, so I was quite excited that it was going to hop straight on this like vlog project. And then I hated it. This was also a DNF. September, not a great month for this prompt set. This felt like it was going to touch on a topic that I find quite interesting, which is, if all witches are women, what about the trans women? How do they get their powers? We started off with I believe, yeah, it was trans girl who wants to take the place of her friend who is going to be picked up to join this coven that comes along. Unfortunately, the writing felt very juvenile. It felt like it had been written in the bubble. I'm not convinced this was edited very well. It read like YA when it was sold to me as adult, and that really put me off. And I didn't enjoy the writing, and that was enough for me to DNF, so I did DNF. So disappointing September. October, Violent Words. I was going to read The Buffalo Hunter. I have an arc of that on the way, but I don't actually know when it comes out, so I don't know when it's going to reach me. So I didn't have it. And then Weapons, I read The Return of the King. This was part of my reread for The Lord of the Rings. I have never finished Return of the King. I'd read Fellowship and I've read Two Towers, but I've never finished Return of the King. And then I found out about the Andy Serkis audiobooks, and they're fucking fantastic. If you want to hear my reviews of Fellowship and Two Towers, they are in my, I want to say March and April wrap-ups, if not February and March wrap-ups. It's one of those two. It's 2 consecutive months, but I really enjoyed them. Return of the King, I have a lot of thoughts about, because my main understanding of the lore and the stories of Lord of the Rings come from the films. Like, I watched the films first. I was a kid when they came out. My parents watched them. I'm pretty sure my mum got like a press pack, so I've got some like cool memorabilia for them. I grew up on them. I loved them. They were a hyperfixation. The story told in the films kind of stopped halfway through the book, because we don't touch on the Scouring of the Shire. We don't touch on the Long Way Home. We just gloss over that. And it's kind of all crushed into a montage. I think that was the right choice for the films, now having read the books. I think it was a good call. I think the way that they adapted the novels into the films was well done, given the medium that they were trying to portray the story through, if that makes sense. The books are something else. There are a couple of things I wish we had touched on more in the films, particularly the fact that Aragorn is magic. And the fact that Kingsfoil works so well as a healing plant for him is because he's the king. Like, that's not really touched on in the films from what I remember. I'm gonna do a rewatch now so I can go back. But that's not touched on it. Like, he does some like killer healing of, I think it's Faramir in the big battle at the end of Return of the King. It's not even the end, it's the fucking beginning of Return of the King. And it's all because of Kingsfall, and they make this big deal out of him being the king returned. And there's more people in Minas Tirith that we don't get to meet. I think it's Baragon, who's one of the guards, and his son, who like Pippin befriends. And the fact that the beacons being a plot point in Return of the King is not a thing in the books because they've already been lit. It's the fact that it's just the war. There's like less of a plot around that. Things just sort of happen. The beacons happen before Gandalf and Pippin get there because they see them on their journey to Minas Tirith. That was weird. And then Scouring of the Shire and Saruman's downfall. Fucking bananas. So in the films, Saruman gets stabbed by Grima and falls off of Orthanc, and it's very dramatic and incredibly gross. In the books, he scurries away, essentially. He's allowed to leave. He's held captive by Treebeard and the Ents for a long time until the war is over and the Fellowship come back and just allow him to leave because they're nice like that. They pass him on the road, which is really odd, on the way back to the Shire. And then they get back to the Shire and basically, spoilers, for a book that's nearly 70 years old, Saruman and his goons have taken over the Shire to gain control of the pipeweed, trade. There are curfews now, no one's happy, everyone's like, there are sheriffs everywhere, it's fucking horrible. They've cut down the party tree, they've ripped up gardens, there are horrible factories belching smoke everywhere. Like, it's horrible. It's a horrible place. The Shire has been ruined. And our 4 hobbits get back because Gandalf pisses off to visit Bombadil and it's just like, no, your problem now. So it's basically these 4 hobbits come back to the Shire and go, what the fuck? And start beating up people. Merry and Pippin get very happy to kill people, and then they lead a revolution to take back the Shire. And it's just like the weirdest appendix to a story that in my head had finished at the 50% mark. It made me very angry. Saruman coming back felt weird. It felt beneath him from the Saruman that I understand from the films. So I was trying to pick that apart in my head a little bit. Obviously, we see a little bit of the Scouring of the Shire in Galadriel's pool, the well, in the Two Towers, I want to say, but we properly dive into it in the books, and it's just something else. It feels like a whole different story. It feels like he's just tacked a novella on the end of The Return of the King. The pacing and the beats story-wise of that book just don't make any sense, and I'm wondering if that's because they did split it up into 3 books in order to publish it. Many thoughts about that. I was going to include that in my April wrap-up because it was the only book that I finished that I thought I could talk about, but I've forgotten I put it down on here. So there we go, I got to talk about it.
For November, the title prompt was the word never. I chose Nevermore, The Trials of Morrigan Crow, I think it's actually called. This is a children's book. This is about Morrigan Crow, who is cursed. Her family resent her for it. They are waiting for her to die on her 11th birthday, essentially. But hours before she is about to turn 11, she is whisked away to one of the free planes, a secret world, a secret space, secret country, I think it is technically, where she is chosen to audition essentially for this wondrous society, this society of brilliant people who all have brilliant powers and tools and knacks. And she stays at this hotel and she has a patron and she learns about herself and unpicks the trauma in a funny way that she has grown up with her entire life. This was a fantastic book. I think this is a fantastic middle grade book. It definitely served as a lot of inspiration for the middle grade book I am currently writing. I think this is a huge win. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was so well done. I thought it leaned into the right tropes. It wrapped itself up nicely. It went places that were suitably bizarre and weird. You are going to fall off, my dude, if you lean any further. Okay. I would highly recommend it. If you are someone that reads middle grade or knows someone that reads middle grade, please do pick this up. Morrigan Crow is a great recommendation. It's a great series. I don't think I'll be reading the rest of the series just because I don't feel the need to. I've got a full-on upside down cat here. What is going on? You never do this. Just because I feel like I got enough out of the first book, I don't necessarily need to carry on with the series. I don't think that's something that's gonna necessarily bring more to me in terms of reading, but I really enjoyed it and I think other people will as well. She is sliding down my leg. The prompt for the cover for November was food and drink, so I picked the Tea Dragon Society. Blah, 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 blah. The Tea Dragon Society. This is also middle grade, but it is a graphic novel and it is adorable. It is a little bit queer. It is full of weird little tea dragons. There's one called Ginseng. There's one called Rooibos. There's one called... Oh, no, I've forgotten now. I think there's a ginger one. But the tea dragons look like the tea plants that we are familiar with. And they grow the plants on them in their antlers or whatever, but each one is different. There's a cool little bestiary at the end of the book where you can look at the ones that were not mentioned or included in the story. It's a very short graphic novel about finding friends and creating space and community for people in the realm of these dragons, and it's fantastic. Oh, okay, if you start biting me, we're just gonna let go. No? What are we doing? Are we chomping? I also thought this was fantastic. So if you're a graphic novel person, hugely recommend. I really enjoyed the art style on this book as well. I thought it was really good. I would pick up another book by this author. I don't think this was a series. I might be lying. Am I lying? Cool. If it is a series, I would probably pick up another one just because I really like middle grade graphic novels for brain bleach. If I'm having a hard time or just need to read something really quick and easy, middle grade graphic novels are fantastic. Whoa, what are we doing? Thank you. They're just really good at sorting my brain out. So a double win for November. Look at us go.
And then finally, December, the title had to have alliteration in it, so I picked Blood Over Brighthaven. I love this. I think this is a 5-star. Could I tell you why now? Maybe? Fuck, I read this a long time ago. I think I read this back in February. Maybe March. That is well over 2 months ago now. I understand why this is super hyped up. This is about a female mage trying to make her way in a very misogynistic and sexist society. They allow women to try out for this High Council of Mages once every 10 years or something stupid. It's dark academia. It's heavily academic. So we properly dive into the lore of the magic system and the world and how that functions and what the impacts of the magic system have on society and the vast vastly different like classes that we have in society. We touch on racism and xenophobia and refugees, blind ignorance as well as informed ignorance. This book is devastating. The plot twist I should have fucking seen coming, but I didn't, and it hit me like a fucking bus. I think it's really well written. I think the romance I really could have fucking done without, but that's the story of my life. Really, really solid fucking book. It's been too long since I read it. I was gonna fucking film clips for this earlier on, and I didn't because I got sad and busy and shit happened. But there we go. And the last one was a DNF. I DNF Kraken by China Melville, which was supposed to be a monochromatic cover. I don't like books set in museums. I think I've come to that conclusion. I think I can safely say that if a book is set in a museum, particularly if it's like any kind of fantasy mystery, it's not for me. It's not for me, and I know that about myself now, and that's okay. That's me done. That is my buzzword picks and reads and not reads and didn't quite get around to reading. There we go. I hope this made sense. I hope if you're doing Buzzword, maybe you got some ideas for prompts. I did read some really good books for this. I also DNF'd a lot of books for this. It just wasn't fun anymore. I'm not going to make the mistake of trying to do a vlog this big in the future because it just felt like it was hanging over my head, and it felt like every book I wanted to pick up needed to be for this vlog, or I needed to fit it into this vlog somehow. Particularly because I was also doing my 12 to read in 2025 vlog at the same time. So I think that's why I got into this slump, because I was doing two giant fucking vlogs at the same time, so I didn't feel like I had any choice over what I was reading. And for my PDA brain, pathological demand avoidance, it's not good. It's not good. I need to have at least the illusion of choice when it comes to fun things, or they're not fun anymore. Woof. Like and subscribe and all that good stuff. There's shit in the description if you're nosy, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much for being here.